Get rolling. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Lopez. I'm the host MC today for our sixth session in the series with Colorado Health and our sponsors, Reimagining Housing Solutions, equipping Colorado's local leaders to address housing demands. Today, we're going to hear all about how to build and preserve housing. We're going to talk about all kinds of funding opportunities and probably have a little bit more time than we normally do for questions and answers. So we hope that you'll be jotting those down over the next 45 minutes. And here's our agenda. So I just introduced myself, and we're going to do a Zoom poll as always to kind of see where folks are at as we begin the session. And then we're so lucky to have Jerry Lynn Francis with us with Colorado Housing Finance Authority, a wonderful partner of ours. And she's going to explain and introduce you all to this incredible resource that they've created, some new programs they've created, and just all the opportunity from CHAFA in the next 12 months. And then we'll have Andrew Atchley from Division of Housing talk about Division of Housing's training and funding opportunities, especially as it relates to recent legislation and the hundreds of millions of dollars that'll be flowing down to our local communities. It's about a 35-40 slides, so it's shorter than our normal sessions, which again, I think is wonderful because we can spend more time having conversation about how do we use these funds or these resources. We want to always thank our sponsors. This has been a wonderful collaborative effort since the beginning, which we started at the beginning of the year. So this is primarily sponsored by the Colorado Health Foundation, CHAFA, Housing Colorado, Colorado Municipal League, CCI, Enterprise, Colorado Center on Law and Policy, Project Moxie, and the COVID-19 Eviction Defense Project. Our sponsors gave us feedback into what kinds of trainings to create and helped spread the word about these opportunities. We're here. How did that happen? So this is the last formal presentation in the series. And again, well, that's all I'll say. The next slide, I think, explains a lot more. Thanks, Matt. A little bit about logistics and housekeeping. So every session we've done since March is recorded and posted on the Colorado Health Foundation website. And we'll also share it directly with you via email. Again, submit questions at any time through the Q&A function on Zoom. We'll answer them probably at the end of the session, just to keep the flow going for our presenters. But we have plenty of time for that Q&A today. In the next week or two, you'll receive a feedback survey about the series because we want to see what you thought worked, what didn't work, if we should do anything like this moving forward, et cetera. It's very helpful because we haven't done this before. Last but not least, we got a request from Colorado Health to offer a bonus session. And so we're going to do that on Friday, September 9th from noon to 2. I think this will be incredibly relevant. We're going to focus on local housing policy, state and local ballot measures. So, again, I think there's a lot of conversations around the state. It'd be great to hear from a number of folks what's being planned and what the best practices are. Next slide. All right, Matt, let's do a Zoom poll.
All right, we've got almost everybody's answers tallied up. Maybe I'll just a couple more seconds here. Appreciate your feedback. Okay, so it looks like we've got some level of familiarity for the most part, with some reporting, 24% reporting somewhat unfamiliar, and close to 10% saying we do not yet have any familiarity with funding that's coming down. Thank you all for that feedback. That really helps kind of cue up our conversation for today.
All right, Jerry Lynn, we're going to hand it to you now. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, that sounds great. Well, good afternoon and happy Friday, everyone. It's good to be with you. I want to thank the Colorado Health Foundation for organizing this wonderful series and for inviting CHAFA to be a part of it. My name is Jerry Lynn Francis. I am the Director of Marketing and Community Relations for Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. Got to get the organization name right, also known as CHAFA. And I see on the participant list many familiar names and faces or names, and also some fellow champions, including Jennifer Kermode, who serves on our board of directors, as well as many new names. So I am excited to be connecting with all of you today. First, before we dive into some of our resources, just a little bit of background about CHAFA for those of you who may not be familiar with our organization. We are a statewide organization that works to strengthen Colorado by investing in affordable housing and economic development. We were created by the Colorado General Assembly, but we're actually not a part of state government. A lot of folks think we are. We love collaborating with our state government partners, but we are not a state agency ourselves. We are separate and distinct. Our role is to go out and raise money in the private markets and bring those private sector investments back here to Colorado to strengthen affordable housing and economic development. And we do that by investing in 4 areas of focus, including affordable homeownership, the development and preservation of affordable rental housing, business lending, and also in advancing community partnerships. And it's in this last area of focus, advancing community partnerships, that some of the new offerings that I'm going to highlight today have come forward. So in our work, engaging with local stakeholders all across Colorado's beautiful 64 counties, we heard one emerging theme quite a bit in the past few years. And that was a desire for more resources for non-traditional developers, nonprofits, community collaboratives, passionate individuals who really want to advance affordable housing in the places where they live and work, but they're not developers. And so they don't know or have access to or familiarity with the path to move that vision forward and the resources that might be available to help them. And so we put on our thinking caps at CHAFA and said, how can we create a resource that helps those individuals that we really want to help them move their vision forward, start to get that ball rolling. And so with that was born the Colorado Affordable Housing Developers Guide. This is a web-based platform that was developed by CHAFA in collaboration with Enterprise Community Partners, a great national organization with a strong Colorado presence and an alignment around our mission of affordable housing. So let's go to the next slide and start to dive in to the guide. When we started this process, we said to ourselves, wow, there is so much to share about affordable housing. How can we really be intentional about the scope that the guide covers, and what really do we want to seek to offer? So first, we wanted to provide an accessible reference for those who wanted to better understand affordable housing in general, and then the development process specifically. We also wanted to use the guide as a way to help these individuals build coalitions or advance their partnerships and path forward in pursuing affordable housing within their community. And we knew that we were launching some technical assistance offerings, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in depth today as well. So we wanted this guide resource to be a hand-in-hand companion to the technical assistance that we were offering. Our stakeholder engagement told us that communities are focused both in the for rent and the for sale housing space, and certainly CHAFA works all along the housing continuum as well. So it was important for us that the guide address both housing opportunities, and so it does. And in particular, we knew that this need for additional capacity and resources is especially important in more rural development and those non-traditional developers who are really seeking to pursue small scale housing. So think 30 units or fewer. This isn't necessarily the guide for those developers who might be pursuing tax credits. There are helpful tips and tricks in there and tools and assessments that might further certain aspects of that. But this guide really wasn't necessarily intended for that particular development market. These are resources intended for smaller scale housing. So let's go to the next slide, please. We also wanted the guide to serve multiple purposes. We know that folks just individually might want to access the guide information to strengthen your own industry knowledge, become familiar with the jargon, brush up on your skills, or explore the landscape. But we also know that oftentimes it's small teams, working groups, and coalitions that are advancing these goals. And so we wanted it to be useful for that space as well. And then certainly even bigger picture, oftentimes there might be that small working group that needs to bring in the larger community or do community engagement with neighbors, with residents, with other organizations that want to be brought into the dialogue. And so we wanted this resource to be available to help advance those larger community engagement needs. In addition, we didn't want it to just be some boring manual. So I encourage you to check it out. I'm going to give you the link to it. We hope we met the mark on that. But we know there are lots of books that are out there and available to read, and they are exceptional, but we didn't want to recreate the wheel or have it feel daunting to anyone to access this information. So we've worked to try and incorporate some tools, some templates, some self-assessments that make the guide a little bit more interactive, hopefully, and help users advance their goals. Okay, let's keep going. So what do we cover in the guide? What topics are included? Well, we really wanted to make this a comprehensive A to Z resource. So we start at the very beginning with what is affordable housing? How do we define affordable housing in this space? And what different kinds of affordable housing developments might a community consider pursuing based on their local needs? We also explore, what does a development team look like? What are some of the traditional roles? And we have some tools and self-assessments to help users evaluate, is your team well prepared to pursue affordable housing? What gaps might you have in terms of knowledge or experience in your team that you might want to expand with consulting partners or other affiliated organizations who can round out your development team? We also heard loud and clear in our engagement about what folks would like included in the guide, that community engagement, tips for how to message, tips for how to build buy-in was very important. And so we have a really robust community engagement section included. Also, top of the list was pre-development, market feasibility, and financial feasibility. So I think we often hear, just as was indicated in the Zoom poll today, there's a sense of not being fully aware or fully informed about all the different resources that might be available either locally at the state level or at the federal level to support affordable housing development. So we have built in some resources that I'm going to show you today that can help hopefully raise awareness and help build knowledge about what is available in this space. Market feasibility and pre-development is also a really robust section to help you think about the steps needing that one might need to take as you start your development process and you narrow down what kind of affordable housing you want to pursue. Who are you really seeking to serve? Are you targeting seniors? Are you targeting individuals and families? And what additional considerations then you might want to consider given the market that you choose to support. Project construction considerations gets into the vertical build and how to begin to structure that work, as well as operations and compliance takes you all the way through the lease up and the long-term management of the development and aspects to think about as you get into that phase of work. Again, there are a number of tools and assessments available in the guide. One of my favorites is the glossary. I think many of us in the housing space know that we sort of speak our own lingo, right? And it doesn't often make sense to those who are newer to the space. We have an unending amount of acronyms, unfortunately. So the glossary is really intended to try and break that down for folks, help provide some context, and is available to move back and forth throughout the guide as a resource. We also know there's nothing more important than learning from lived experience and learning from success and failures of others. So we've included some case studies to highlight different areas of emphasis so that folks can really see how this work comes to fruition and what is important to help keep in mind as they move forward in their own goals. And then last but certainly not least, we really wanted to tease out some key themes throughout the guide. And so as you explore the guide and as you move through, these are some elements that you would see. So certainly ways to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, a really important theme for all of us to be keeping in mind in our work. How to increase the disaster resiliency of buildings and keep in mind our environment and commitment to environment. And then also green building sustainability. All right, let's move on. So this guide that I've been talking about, here's where you can find it. It is on our website. This is a direct link to it. I would love for you all to go there and follow along if you'd like while we're talking. The guide is responsive, so you can keep us on your screen and maybe go on your phone, and it'll still allow you to follow along. So the guide can be used on a phone, on a tablet, iPad, or on a traditional desktop or laptop device. It all is gonna work the same pretty much either way. You can also access the guide as a PDF. So there's a lot of interactivity on the web-based platform, but if you're someone who wants to just have that hard copy and print it out, there's a way to do that. And sometimes we've heard folks like to do both. They like to have the hard copy printed out with them and then use the interactive side by side, and that certainly works. All right, so let's keep going. If you go to the web-based platform, this is the homepage of the guide. We're not going to do it online together, but I'm going to show you some screenshots. And then again, if you're navigating on a different device, this will be what you see. Or if you go to the guide at a future date, this will be your web-based experience. This is the homepage. You can see on the right that there's a main menu. And that main menu, when you scroll using the gray scroll bar, will allow you to jump from chapter to chapter. So you don't have to read it from beginning to end. If there is a certain aspect of work that you're really interested in at any given moment, you can go right to that section. There's little arrows next to the main menu that will allow you to see the contents within each chapter, and that will help you get a feel for, is this really the content or the area that you're looking to dive into? As you scroll further down, you'll start to see the tools and assessments that I referenced earlier, the glossary, the case studies, for example. There's also a way, if you do want to just read one page to the next page, you can just click next page on the bottom. You can kind of see it here on the bottom right side with the little arrow. That would allow you to just move forward and back page by page if that's your preferred way to do so. Okay, let's go to the next slide. In addition, we are building some short on-demand videos. Throughout the year, we've been previewing the guide by breaking up different sections, different chapters, and kind of walking through them in depth. I hope some of you have joined us for those webinars, but if not, no problem. We are recording them and we are placing them on the guide itself. So as you go through those tools, you'll see a section that says webinar training series, and you can click on those to view those repeated webinars so that you can access this information at any point in time. Or if you wanted to review, maybe you spent some time in a section and you want to go back to see it, you can recheck that out. Okay, keep going. Two things that I really want to call out for your attention in terms of tools and resources in the guide are the funding sources inventory. So again, going back to helping to raise awareness and break down some of the barriers that we know are felt out there about really understanding what funding resources are available either at the state, federal, or local level. We created an inventory. So this is an assessment of all the tools that are available that we know of. It has not yet been updated with some of the newer resources just passed in this last legislative session. So just know that, because we know those rules and programs are still being developed. But that said, there is a great way to get a feel for the breadth of opportunity out there. And the checkbox that you're seeing on the screen allows you to select what different resources you might be interested in, and then sort of sort and give you a preview of resources that might help meet your unique needs or the unique aspect of your development that you're pursuing. So this is one great tool that I would encourage everyone to check out as you get into the site. Another one, and this gives you a preview of the video training library that I mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. Another great resource is our financial modeling tool. So we actually have two available for you. One is a short back of the envelope calculator, as we call it, that Chaffa's community development team created. It really allows you to put in some very basic project estimates and help you assess what your funding model might be. Another one, let's keep going, is provided to us by the Colorado Division of Housing. So thanks Andrew and team for helping us share this resource. And this really is a much more extensive model and one that's used by the Colorado Division of Housing team to help identify potential funding uses and sources. So again, helping you think through the math and that funding methodology that is required for every affordable housing development. Okay, so let's keep going. So moving on, I want to highlight our technical assistance program. You heard me say at the beginning that the Colorado Affordable Housing Developers Guide was intended to also be a great companion to our new technical assistance program. So in the same spirit of community engagement and wanting to be responsive to feedback that we heard about how do I move this ball forward, we thought, well, let's do some matchmaking. Let's match up some of these project sponsors who have a vision with some affordable housing consultants who are really knowledgeable in the space and might be able to help walk alongside them. They certainly don't do the work for them, but they help light the path forward that the project sponsor has to take in order to continue to move their vision forward. So next slide, please. Again, we did this with the lens of really wanting to support those smaller scale developments. So eligible projects for this matchmaking technical assistance need to be 30 units or fewer. Again, it can be advancing housing that will be either for rent or for sale. We are open to projects that are either new construction, acquisition, rehab, preservation. And project sponsors can either be a for-profit, nonprofit, local government, or community collaborative, and we've worked with all of them to date. But the key thing through all of them is certainly we do need to be advancing affordable housing. So we do have some income thresholds that need to be met. Just as a general rule of thumb, can't exceed 120% AMI. You'll see here on my slide that we have some percentages in there. We can be a little flexible on that. So if you're thinking you have a project and kind of want to talk through those percentages, please reach out to us. But again, the commitment to affordability does have to be there. Okay, let's keep going. So we launched this technical assistance program back in 2021. We have had 3 application rounds. So this gives you a feel of areas across the state where we've had the pleasure of working with different project sponsors. So we've had everyone from local school districts, local county commissioners, local housing coalitions, economic development agencies working with housing authorities, all different flavors, small for-profit, individual citizen-led coalitions, all different flavors of project sponsors who've been paired up with our affordable housing consultants to help build the path forward. So let's look at what a project life cycle really is for our technical assistance. So normally the project starts with a stakeholder meeting and site visit kickoff. So this is really to get everyone around the table to understand and get input on what the ideal concept design might be, to look at the site, to see what the site might accommodate, and to establish shared goals and objectives. Then we move into the concept design and master planning. Our consultants will provide some rough sketches and build out based on what we heard at the kickoff meeting. And then in addition, we move into project financing and action plan. They will also provide some financial modeling. So based on what the community said they want to accomplish, here's what estimated funding goals and needs are going to be, and then some recommendations of how those goals might be met. Again, kind of going back to that funding inventory, looking at making recommendations of what some of the different federal, state, local financial solutions could be to help bring this project to fruition. And then at the end, we provide a report. So the consultants will document all of this in a very professionally looking report, and the project sponsors have that available to them. They have all found that to be really instrumental as they approach funders, right? Looking to bring in that capital. Those funders are going to want to see that this is a vision or a concept that has been fully thought out, and that report really helps document all of the work and input received throughout this process. So the timeline for all projects varies just based on community needs, but I would say typically they've not taken more than a 6-month period, and it's a few meetings and engagements throughout that timeline. Okay, let's keep going. So we talked at the beginning about expanded resources and some of the legislation that passed last year, creating new opportunities. So I want to highlight 2 of those, shifting gears a little bit from the capacity building side to the access to capital side of CHAFA's work. That 2 resources that were enhanced during the last legislative session that we are really excited to be bringing to communities. So let's move into that. The first is the state affordable housing tax credit. The tax credit, first of all, are you all able to raise your hands? Is the functionality of the reactions working, Matt and Jen? Should we test it?
We can, yes, it looks like it is. I just see someone raise their hand just now.
Okay, good. Someone raised their hand. So if you're familiar somewhat, if you've heard about state or federal low-income housing tax credits, raise your hand. I can't see it on my end, so I'm going to rely on you, Matt, to tell me if anyone's raising their hand. Okay.
We're getting slow, so we've got close to 20 that have raised their hands so far.
Okay. So we have some folks who have heard about the tax credit. Well, wonderful. Well, the state tax credit is something that's been around in Colorado since the 2000s and was recently renewed in 2014 by the Colorado General Assembly. It is a way for us to help local developers, for-profit, nonprofit developers, raise private sector equity to help fund their affordable rental housing developments. Essentially, it's a tax incentive for the private sector to invest in the development and preservation of affordable rental housing. At its simplest form, that's what it does. And we in Colorado have been really blessed to have a Colorado General Assembly that on both sides of the aisle really supports this resource and that means of raising capital to support increased affordable housing. So in 2014, they renewed this program. CHAFA is the allocator of the credits. Those developers who want to use that resource to attract capital and equity investment apply to us. We are the entity that evaluates those applications and awards the credits. In 2014, the General Assembly renewed the program for 2 years and $5 million. And since that time, we have been going back to the Colorado General Assembly and showing them the great success of the program, the strong track record it has for supporting affordable housing. And just this last session, they have allowed us to continue to deploy the credit through 2031. So without that extension, the program would have expired in 2024. They allowed us to set a 7-year extension. So we are able to now continue to award through 2031. In addition, in one of the more recent extensions, they allowed us to increase the amount of tax credits that we had available to allocate from the original 5 million to 10. And this last year's legislation let us keep that increase at $10 million in annual allocation authority. So we were thrilled at that continuation. I want to share, just as I noted, the tax credits are awarded competitively. So developers who apply for them are competing against other developers who apply. And there is what's called a qualified allocation plan that we at CHAFA create, which helps set out the criteria that developers who are seeking the tax credits have to meet. It also sets out all the application processes and timelines for when applications have to be submitted. We publish that qualified allocation plan and update it every 2 years. So we are right now in the phase of crafting an updated QAP that would be effective for 2023 and 2024. So I would encourage those who are interested in the tax credit program to go on our website. We have a draft with highlights of what the proposed changes are being discussed will be. And we are accepting public comment on all those changes through October 1st, 2022. There's a way to submit comment online on our website. So we invite you to do that. We also held 2 public hearings, and those were held earlier in July of this year, but we are accepting comment through October. Okay, let's go to the next slide. The second additional financial resource that the Colorado General Assembly approved that we at CHAPA have the privilege to administer is the Middle Income Access Program funding. So for those who, of all 20 of you who raised your hand about the tax credit program, know that the tax credit program is really intended to serve households earning 60% of area median income and below, right? Rental housing that's built with tax credits has to serve households 60% area median income and below. But we all know that there are housing needs for those earning even above 60% AMI. It used to be that the market rate apartment market kind of met right up with that 60% AMI threshold. And once you got to that point, you were likely to be able to find a market rate apartment that one could afford to rent. Well, that we all know was no longer the case. So there's often a gap between those who earn more than 60% AMI and those who can actually afford a market rate apartment. And we have at CHAPA called that middle income housing. And so in an effort to try and create resources that could support the development of middle income housing, we launched a pilot program. And it provides mezzanine gap debt to, again, for-profit, nonprofit developers who are seeking to build apartments to serve that middle income space. We did this as a pilot at CHAPA with our own capital. We put $14 million of our own resources, flexible resources, to launch this pilot program. We do that a lot at CHAPA. We innovate, we put a little resources behind it, we see if it's something that works, and hopefully it takes off. If not, we go back to the drawing board and retool. Well, this was something that took off. We were really thankful about. So with that initial $14 million investment, we were able to support 5 developments, creating 622 affordable middle income rental units. The communities who were supported included Steamboat, Keystone, Estes Park, Denver, Gypsum. So what was exciting about that is that it's often, not necessarily just Denver metro communities, but communities in really somewhat hard to serve locations as well. We took this pilot program to the Colorado General Assembly last year and the great work of the Affordable Housing Transformational Task Force, and we showcased it and we said, we think we have something here and we'd really love to see additional investment. So they were pleased with the work, wanted to help lean into it, and thanks to the Colorado General Assembly, they have approved an additional $25 million investment in this program. So we are really excited to be deploying these resources going forward. And with that, I am going to pause, and Matt and Jen, I would welcome questions now, or if you want to wait till the panel, I'll let you guide me on how you'd like to proceed.
Jerry Lynn, that was amazing. I'm always in awe at all the work CHAPA is doing. So much gratitude. I think we'll keep rolling through Andrews. Right. People can kind of thread the 2 agency resources together. And anybody who can do that, we will hire you tomorrow.
And please do feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A. I already saw one come in. Please feel free to continue to do that as they're top of mind as you're reflecting on what was just presented. Please drop your questions there and we'll revisit them at the end of the presentation.
All right, Andrew, this is all you. Thank you, friend.
Thanks. So I'm Andrew Atchley. I am the Housing Development Specialist Team Manager, or something like that. I cover the San Luis Valley and Southwest Colorado currently. I'm based out in the San Luis Valley. I live in Monte Vista. I've got an office in Alamosa that I never go to. So I'm going to go over some of the Division of Housing's training opportunities, as well as, I'm sure you guys have heard about the boatload of new funds that the Division of Housing is getting in the next couple months. So I'm going to go over some of those as well. So if you want to go to the next slide, Matt. The first training opportunity I want to talk about is the Local Officials Toolkit. Now, this is part of House Bill 1271 from, I think, last year, 2021. Basically, there's three parts of that bill. There was planning and incentive grants that are basically being administered by our sister agency, the Division of Local Governments. And then there was the creation of this Local Officials Toolkit. So we just, maybe about a month or so, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, something like that, contracted with our consultant that will be doing the bulk of the creation for this toolkit, and that's Enterprise Community Partners. And I think Jen's is going to be a little bit involved here and there with that creation as well as community builders out of Glenwood and some other folks. So the way we're sort of envisioning the toolkit right now is a couple different prongs. So there will be like a 1 hour affordable housing 101, very high level, basically, kind of talking about like, what is affordability? What is the housing continuum? Just that like really high level stuff that could be helpful for, town councils, county commissioners that have really only had to start thinking about affordable housing, as part of their policy in, the last like 2 or 3 years, right? That'll be up on our website. So, we definitely want to get some input also. We're still doing a lot of focus groups and, stakeholder research. So, definitely contact me if any of this stuff sounds like unhelpful. The second part we're looking at is a half-day training that gets a little bit more into the weeds. The way we're sort of envisioning it now is, we'd be talking in the first half essentially about more about like how affordable housing gets funded and developed. And then the second half would go more into policy and those policies that can incentivize affordable housing, and basically taking a look at certain policies that could be barriers to affordable housing. Then we are crafting an RFA right now so we're going to have a competitive application process for some really focused and intense technical assistance that will be provided by enterprise and community builders. So, if I always kind of use the same couple examples, if a jurisdiction wants to rewrite their land use code, create a defensible land use code, they'll be able to work with enterprise and community builders to kind of like rewrite their land use code, look at, ways that they can incentivize affordable housing, what sort of policies they can enact. Or, I remember I was at a CCI meeting and one person, they wanted to, I think they were from Pitkin County, was talking about sustainable governance strategies. And I was just like, I didn't even know what that meant. So like, there can be some like really high level, like, very detailed, technical assistance. Other, communities might just want to know how to talk about affordable housing because, they're just now kind of feeling that crunch. So it's definitely not going to be a, one size fits all technical assistance. It's, like very tailored, focus on what each community actually needs. We do have 2025 on there. Our plan was to do a minimum of 4 communities a year, but due to some weird policy and legislative snafus, I think this bill was enacted like 4 days before the end of the session, which meant we actually have to have all these funds expended by 2024. We're trying to get an extension on that to 2025. which we think we'll get, but that's to be determined. So we're looking at probably 4 communities in this next fiscal year, so 2022, 2023, and then 8 communities, 2023, 2024. We'll also have a web-based resource that'll be kind of a microsite on the Division of Housing's website that's a little bit similar to SHAFA's developer guide, but more focused on policy. If anybody wants information on this toolkit, please send me an email, give me a call. If you would like to be involved in any of the focus groups that we're going to be doing some focus groups probably in the next 6 weeks or so. Shoot me an email. My email is down there on the bottom of that slide. We would love to hear from you because we don't want to be creating something that is of no use to local officials throughout the state. So yeah, next slide. So the Division of Housing also has a couple other training opportunities. We have our Developers Toolkit, which is, it's kind of like a Affordable Housing 101. It's a 2-day training. It's a role-playing sort of situation where you go through site selection, RFP, or a proposal review, do a little bit of financing, I would call it similar to what Jerry Lynn called back of the napkin type of financing, and then we end the training on the 2nd day with a mock Planning and Zoning Commission, which is always fun. Our next Developers Toolkit will be in Gunnison on September 28th and 29th. I think we're going to be, so we have an Eventbrite registration page. If you would like to attend or interested in attending, shoot me an email about that too. And I can send you the link for that Eventbrite registration page. So if the Developers Toolkit is 101, then your hammering out the deal is more like your 201, 301. We haven't done hammering out the deal, I think, since the pandemic started. I think we're going to try and do that in the spring of 2023. Hammering out the deal is very spreadsheet heavy. So if you like spreadsheets, sign up. We kind of go through a number of different project types and how they might be funded, from small rural deals to tax credit deals, and essentially why tax credits are necessary. Because if you got low rents, you can't take on that much debt, so you can't build housing. So we also have the Permanent Supportive Housing Toolkit, which is, we kind of offer in conjunction with Bo Simone Consulting out of, I think, Wisconsin. Jen, are they Wisconsin? I think they're Wisconsin. Not Wisconsin?
They're Colorado based. Yeah.
Oh, they're Colorado based now. Oh, geez, never mind. I have actually gone through the Permanent Supportive Housing Toolkit before this job when I was on the other side at a private nonprofit. It was very intense. Jen, I actually was, I think, one of the instructors. So I was super appreciative and I learned a ton. I mean, I think it went for 6 months. It was either 1 or 2 days each month. And you end up, giving a presentation in front of, a ton of different funders. I mean, very valuable if you are looking to do a permanent supportive housing project. I'm not sure when we are offering that again. But if you're interested in it, again, let me know, and I can find out when we're planning on holding another one of those. Division of Housing also has our monthly webinar series. Our asset management team is kind of responsible for putting those on. It covers everything from compliance issues to how to put together a competitive application to Uniform Relocation Act requirements. It can get pretty in the weeds. So if you want information on that, let me know. They have a monthly email that goes out that kind of talks about, each upcoming subject that they're going to cover. So it can be pretty valuable. Yeah. Next slide. All right, funding. So I'm sure everybody's heard about this $450 million or $500 million or just hundreds of millions of dollars that the Division of Housing is getting in the next couple months. You know, it's a very daunting number. Obviously very necessary. You know, I think the affordable housing crisis across the state is just, you know, I feel like it used to be something that was more front range specific or, you know, rural resort community specific, but now you're feeling it in, you know, the smallest towns all across the state. So the legislature heard us and crafted a lot of, you know, different bills with, you know, different kind of funding priorities on how to spend that money. I'm going to talk about three, if you want to go to the next slide. These three, Senate Bill 159, House Bill 1304, and Senate Bill 160. If you go to the next slide, Matt. So that 159, creates a revolving loan fund of $150 million. This is available, you know, essentially any organization can apply for these: local governments, for-profits, nonprofits, housing authorities, any housing or any market type, so urban, rural resort. There's a list of the eligible activities. I mean, you know, some of these are pretty exciting, like that land banking, and some like the workforce housing. You know, I think in the legislation we're talking about being able to serve up to 140% AMI in rural and rural resort areas. Super pumped. You know, will be like a revolving loan fund, so we'll get payments back in, and this will sustain us, you know, for years to come. How you know, loans are structured, you know, just kind of depends on how the deal shakes out. I mean, you know, from the Division of Housing's perspective, you know, we can be pretty creative on or with how we, you know, structure our loans. You know, we always say between 0 and 3%. I don't think I've ever seen a 3% loan. You know, we usually are loaning around 0.5% to 1%. We can be really creative with the terms, the amortization. We can do cash flow loans. Every once in a while, we can do a performance loan. I wouldn't ask about performance loans if you can avoid it, because it's tough to get one of those. But yeah, super exciting. We are still in the process of doing outreach to communities to see how communities want to see these monies spent and what kind of priorities they want. We've been doing some stakeholder outreach sessions with Housing Colorado and CHAFA throughout the state. We've been to Greeley, Frisco, Grand Junction, just had one in Durango on Tuesday. I think the last one is this coming Tuesday in Colorado Springs. You can probably find information on that on Housing Colorado's website if you want to attend. Or, you know, while we're asking questions, I can kind of like do a little research. I think it's at a library in North Colorado Springs. So yeah, next slide. So, you know, we have our loan program, our revolving loan program, like we just talked about. Now we've got the grants, 138 million. So Division of Housing, you know, if you apply to us and you're a for-profit, you only get a loan. Nonprofits and local governments qualify for grants. Sometimes nonprofits will get loans, just depends on, like, you know, the situation. But, you know, I would say probably 9 times out of 10, a nonprofit's going to get a grant. Same thing, you know, all market types, essentially the same sort of eligible activities. We have to have these contracted by the end of December 2024. So I'm like really, I feel like I'm gonna have to send a lot of like care packages to our contracting team at the end of the year in 2024, because that's going to be a crazy time. And then all those funds have to be spent by 2026. So next slide. So the mobile home investment program, loan program, this is kind of exciting because, you know, one thing that we have found with Division of Housing has been involved in a couple of like resident-owned community mobile home park acquisitions. And what we have found, like the legislature a couple of years ago, basically, enacted timelines for, owners basically having to give residents a certain amount of time, to be able to cobble together the funding if they wanted to, form a resident-owned community and like buy the park and kind of like manage it themselves. And what we found in those acquisitions is our timeline does not really jibe with that timeline. We're the state, we work at the speed of government. And I think the timeline for, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but it's like 90 days to make an offer and then 90 days to close or something like that. I think it might have extended with some recent legislation in this last session. But, I mean, I funded a project in Durango. I think, this had to be like mid last year, and they still don't have an executed contract. So just knowing how we work, we're trying to make it what feels like a little bit more of like a quick strike fund. The loan fund essentially would be managed by 2 or 3 different like third-party lenders, and the resident-owned communities would essentially work with those lenders to apply for those loans. So Division of Housing would kind of like take a step back. There is some technical assistance money, included in that $35 million package, and as well as some lot rent assistance, which I think we're still kind of like working out the kinks of how this program is going to work. So there will be a lot of to be continued. So next slide. I don't even remember what the next slide is. Uh-oh. Yeah, so we're still working on our stakeholder engagement. We have to write guidelines for how all of these new dollars are spent. So that's going to be happening late summer, fall. We expect the first applications to be made probably late 2020. What year is this? 2022. So, got a little bit of time before this, is like these funds are available. But we're probably going to be releasing a couple like specific RFPs or RFPs and NOFAs. But yeah, we got to have all these monies out the door. I guess obligated by the 2024 and then spent down by end of the year 2026. So it's going to be a busy couple years. The Division of Housing is I think looking to hire like 70 new people in the next like 6 to 8 months, something like that, in order to get all this money out the door, which, I am currently looking for a housing development specialist for the Southwest. So, and I'm nervous about that. I can't imagine trying to hire, another 70 people. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Next slide. Yeah, I think that was it. Let's see. If you guys have any questions on any of the training opportunities or funding opportunities, let me know. Give me a call, shoot me a text, email, carrier pigeon, whatever you want to do. I'm always available. So yeah, that's all I got.
Andrew, for folks who are saying, I'm aware of all these opportunities that are kind of coming down, but are still being worked out, what's the best way that folks can stay informed? I know that DOH has a newsletter. Is that what you would recommend, or just to kind of get pinged when these things do open for application and such?
For sure. I would definitely, I think you could sign up for the newsletter on the Division of Housing's website, and that comes from Allison George, the director of the Division of Housing. That is a great newsletter for stuff like this, for job openings. Everyone will have like kind of groundbreakings to, you can see like some affordable housing projects that have happened across the state, as well as we include all of the training opportunities on those newsletters. So, the next newsletter that goes out, or that email blast, that'll include all the information for the developers toolkit in Gunnison. But yeah, definitely sign up for that. It's a good one. And it's not a spam thing, like once a month, maybe twice if we got a lot of stuff going on, which we do. So.
Awesome, Andrew. So I just want to say again, thank you to Jerry Lynn and Andrew. And I also want to say this is the most incredible and overwhelming time in our industry. We talk a lot about during COVID, we had the whole line of first responders in healthcare, and we refer to the housing industry as the second responders, right? So, and we were warned that when Biden approved all those funds a year and a half ago, that we better get ready, and here we are. So we need a lot of grace in the industry, and I want to share a lot of gratitude because it's just really hard right now. We have some questions in the chat. I'm going to take one of them, and then I'm going to pass on the ones that I think are relevant to Jerry Lynn or Andrew. And then I have a whole slew of questions too that I think I think will help local governments who maybe aren't even sure what to ask sometimes. So so the first one is about market studies and if we really need to do feasibility, and especially for low-income folks and all of that. So we do market studies because, and I did this in one of the earlier sessions, but I think we make this assumption that need and market are the same, and they're not. So we will have a needs assessment in a region, and we'll show thousands of households in need of certain types of housing or being rent burdened. A market study is very different. A market study says, if this building looks like this in this location, who would want to or be able to access that housing? And that's a much more narrow focus or universe. And so we really do need those market studies. And Don, you've been on multiple of these sessions, and I want to say thank you because I have this assumption that you're a real advocate for low-income folks, and I appreciate your interest. I want to also make this caveat that when we are helping the very low income and even those experiencing homelessness, we do the market analysis differently. And it has a lot more to do with, are people ready to be housed, and do they have the services available to stay housed? So it's a very different process. So lots of stuff going on here, but yeah, we need those market studies and those service provider feedback. I think the next one, Jerry Lynn, might be for you about, okay, so we'll hand that one to you about, I heard that there's a $25,000 application for low-income housing tax credits.
Sure, thank you for that question and the opportunity to address it. Actually, the application fee for developers who are seeking to apply for tax credits is $10,000. It's not 25, it's 10. And then if those applicants are seeking state credit, it would be $1,000 for the state credit. So I know that sounds like a big number, but to give some context to that, and every aspect of development cost is important, so I don't want to dismiss it, but to give some context, those applications for low-income housing tax credits, the total development cost for an overall project can range and exceed anywhere from $20 million, $30 million and above. So they're rather large size projects. And so the application fee, when considered as kind of that whole total development cost, is still relatively low in that bigger context. But I appreciate the question, and thanks for the opportunity to clarify the amount. And before we move on, I'm sorry, and would always say though, we welcome your comments on the QAP. So if that's something that you wanted to provide comment on, please go to our website and submit your comments and input on the QAP, which is where those fees are set. So thank you for that.
I was just going to make a short comment on the market and like feasibility study. That's something that Division of Housing requires for any application, is like, we need that market data to like back up the Division of Housing investing money in an affordable housing project, which I feel like at this time, like, it seems like just going through the motions. We got to like put something down in our market data section. We all know that there is a need basically everywhere. I mean, that need varies so greatly. We funded a project out in on the Eastern Plains where they didn't really have an affordable housing crisis necessarily. It was just like a housing crisis. Like, they hadn't had a new permit for a new home in like 10 years. So they couldn't keep, their superintendent was like driving 60 miles to the school every day. And so, I think we can be a little bit creative in like what sort of market data we need or can accept. Like for a small 5-unit project on the Eastern Plains, it was a lot of anecdotal data, information from real estate agents, stuff like that. But we gotta have something. So
Thank
we're
you.
not trying to make you spend like $30,000 on a needs assessment for 5 units. So
Thank you. And then I'm going to kind of weave in. Hi, Darlene. Always great to see you here on this webinar. I'm going to go a little bit higher than Darlene because I think what Darlene's asking, I want to set up a larger stage here. So everybody goes home over the weekend, thinks about some stuff. And on Tuesday, they think, I think I really have this housing project and I need some help. Both agencies have regional representatives. How do I find the regional rep for CHAFA or Division of Housing? Who wants to go first?
I'll show you a website that you can find ours.
And while Andrew's doing that, I'll say that CHAFA is on our website as well, which is chafainfo.com. And if you go to our community partnerships section, that's where we have our map, which shows our different community relationship managers, the territories they cover, and also their contact information if you'd like to get a hold of them. And I'll go get that link, and if I can put it in the Q&A aspect just so everyone has it, since our chat's disabled, I'll do that as well. And just a plug, we're actually hiring for an Eastern Colorado CRM right now as well. So.
And then while Andrew's looking for his map, Andy Hill, thanks for joining us. What a wonderful announcement. So the last round of incentive grants for the Division of Local Government, which is in the Department of Local Affairs. I know it's confusing, but it's another pot of money that's outside of the Division of Housing. And the letters of intent for projects from municipalities and counties are due September 1. It's incredibly flexible money, up to 80% of area median income for rental projects and 140% of area median income for ownership. You must be working with your land use strategies. So again, we know this is really complicated. I'm finding that all of the staff on all of these agencies are so responsive because they understand you're under the gun. So Andy, I think you also provided contact info. Okay, a link to the grant application. If you have questions, what I'm hearing from Dola is shoot an email out. Just ask your questions because again, we know this is coming up very quickly. I'm new to this funding, Andy, and I'm thinking about applying for it. So I'm learning with direct experience.
And if I can just tag on to that, hey, Andy, it's great to have you here with us. And I just want to say what a fantastic partner she is. And for those who may not know, with the technical assistance that DLG was offering, we often had some projects where they were able to take advantage of the DLG technical assistance for certain aspects of their work, and then the CHAFA technical assistance for other aspects of their work. So we did kind of like a joint review to make sure that we were evaluating and awarding synergistically and not duplicating or overlapping. So just keep that in mind. I found that to be a really exciting and successful process for us. So thanks for the collaboration, Andy.
Jerry Lynn, that ties right into one of my main questions, which is, as Division of Housing rolling out a bunch of their stuff, will you be doing the same kind of collaboration around the technical assistance and capacity building? Is there going to be a formal, and will it be at the like leadership level or regional level or both?
I don't think we've started those conversations yet on that particular aspect, but you know what I'll say is we love our partners at DOH. And so I think we try to keep those doors open as much as we can. So I'll say that from CHAFA's perspective. Yeah.
Perfect. I think we've covered all the questions in the chat. Are there any other questions from our participants?
I guess, through all 6 of these sessions, you just have answered all of the questions about affordable housing in Colorado. So way to go.
Andrew. I think probably people are so overwhelmed they don't even know what to ask. So the work has only begun. Again, all of the series is on the Colorado Health Foundation website. We'll have that additional series on September 9th. We hope that as you do have questions, maybe one thing we could do, Matt, is we could have a cheat sheet, a one-pager, and Colorado Health would host with maybe links. We reference so many links, and if I were new to housing, I'd be terrified. So maybe we can do a shortcut of links on the Colorado Health Foundation. Like here's the CHAFA website, here's the the TA website, here's the DOLA website, I don't know that exists anywhere, or if it does, how to find it. that sound like a good idea for folks?
That's a great idea. Yeah, and I will also remind folks that we do post the slideshows in their entirety on the Health Foundation website, many of which have active links within them to different resources and things like that. We've been intentional about including links to resources throughout the series. So if you're ever wanting to go revisit a certain topic, be sure and check out those slides because many of them are pretty rich with links and resources.
And on that note, we're going to give you some time back on your Friday.
There was one question that came in
Oh, good.
from Don. A question that came up recently at another program I was in. What about access to non-refundable earnest money? That is, I would say the closest the Division of Housing comes is we administer, or we award funds to various agencies around the state that do down payment assistance programs. In the past, they could serve up to 80% AMI households. Now we started using a different funding source, so we can go up to 100% AMI. You know, if you need information on whatever organization it is in your area that we contract with, I can, you know, get you that. But as far as earnest money goes, I don't know, that's a tough one. Jerry Lynn, you got any ideas on earnest money?
Let me say this. I think what you want is refundable earnest money. So there's a way to structure your contracts to make sure you have minimal risk. So when we typically go in and partner with one of our agencies to put real estate under contract, we'll get funding and then we promise it's refundable, right? So we manage that contract to make sure that doesn't happen. What you really need money for is the feasibility and due diligence, so that you know that you actually want to buy that property. And those funds are very hard to come by, but I suspect that there's going to be some of those opportunities, both with Andy Hill's program and with the new funds from Division of Housing. So think about it as, where do I get my 50 to 70,000 for my studies and pre-development more than the earnest money? I wonder, that would be really interesting, Andrew, to if somebody puts in an application and says, I'm going to use this for earnest money, but it'll be refundable, and you know, I'll be able to whatever. So it's a great question, Don, and something we struggle with a lot on the ground.
Yeah, for sure. I just always struggle with timing with the Division of Housing, you know.
So here's another thing that we've been successful with is if you are partnering with your local government, we've seen local governments using their ARPA funds and general fund to sponsor projects. And so we did that at least once where they provided the funds. And so it's always an ask. I think that's it, my friends. Happy Friday. Thanks everybody for joining, and thanks to our speakers. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.